I don't understand why so many people are leaving, because I'm also going to talk about stupidity. A different kind of stupidity, but it's related. So the title of my talk is The Business of Privacy by Disaster. And I was going to call it Privacy by Disaster, but then I thought, hey, full disclosure, I run a company that pays wages and we work on privacy, so we are making money off privacy, you could say. So I was like, okay, let's call it The Business of Privacy by Disaster. So as I said, I'm part of a company. There's a few of us. We started as a university spin-off. We thought we'd just do research, get some studies and reports to write every once in a while. But then the world has been changing as we've been growing. And so we've been able to experience the recent things that have happened, like the Snowden revelations, from a quite different point of view than most people. Because we've gone from having an expectation of working on just doing research, academic research, to working with private clients. We were very surprised to see that pretty soon after we started, people started to call us and say, actually, we need your services in the real world, in the private world. Companies. And so what I want to share with you is how we've experienced this from the business perspective, or how the world and privacy are changing and how they've been changing in the last few months/years. And I'm going to start with a quiz. So if I ask you, in the last few years, who did the most to raise awareness about privacy, who would you say it was? Edward Snowden? Jennifer Lawrence, who had her nude pictures stolen from her iCloud storage? Or the people that campaigned against full-body scanners being installed at airports? How many of you would say Snowden? How many of you would say Jennifer Lawrence? How many of you would say full-body scanners? None. Jennifer Lawrence was the winner, by the way. It's funny because in the activist world, people would say Edward Snowden. In the real world, people would say Jennifer Lawrence, because she's a pop star. In our world, it was full-body scanners. I don't know if you remember what happened in 2010. A guy got on a plane to fly from Amsterdam to Detroit with an explosive. He only managed to explode his own underpants. Apparently, people in the plane intervened. There was a problem with the liquid he was carrying. So in the end, nothing happened. But it was a massive scare, the first of its kind after 9/11. So quite a lot after that, many years after that. And so that reopened the debate about security in airports. What can we do? What we did after 9/11 clearly is not enough, because people like this guy can get on planes. As days and weeks and months progressed and passed, we learned that the guy was actually on a watch list, that his own dad reported this man for his contacts with Al-Qaeda. So he was somewhat being monitored, but no one had run any investigation on him. So he was in a large database, never investigated, so he was not in a no-fly list. So he was able to get on that plane. So if you ask anyone who thinks rationally, what was the problem? We could say, well, we didn't invest enough in intelligence, traditional police intelligence. Someone should have checked this guy out and find out whether beyond his dad's report, he was an actual danger. No one did that. But that would have been the rational response. And in security in Europe, there's not many rational responses. And so we had a problem with police intelligence, and the response was full-body scanners. How would full-body scanners have stopped that guy? We don't know. There's no relation between the problem and the technological solution. But that happens, as I said, very often. If we can buy a machine, why would we worry with exploring other policy options? But that, which I guess for you went pretty much unnoticed, really changed the privacy world. When full-body scanners were installed, people rejected them. People refused to go through the full-body scanner. There was a massive campaign in the US, people in Europe complaining, saying, this is an invasion of my privacy. I want to opt out. You cannot tell me that I have to go through a machine that can see me naked. Also, images of famous people naked ended up on YouTube. So it was clear that the security measures were not very good. And so the full-body scanners were discarded. They were never installed on a full scale as envisaged initially. This meant that many companies lost lots of money. No company wants to create just a pilot. They lose so much money with just a pilot. The idea is that you create a pilot at a loss, and then you make a lot more money by selling hundreds, thousands of that machine that you've created. And so companies lost money, and governments lost reputation and trust from their citizens. And so something began to change, and we could notice this. People in governments and in private companies began to realize, well, maybe we need to understand a bit better what is happening with privacy and how people understand and want their privacy respected. And so for us, definitely, what's been a game changer has been the issue of full-body scanners. Just a year and a half after this, the European Commission organized a societal impact working group to look at how to better assess the societal impact of data-intensive technologies, of surveillance technologies. Right now, the European Commission does not fund research that does not look into this issue. So there's been a lot of policy change, which has not made the news, but it's definitely changed the world that we work on. But there's other cases. There were cases before. That was 2005, when the Dutch got the smart meters installed in their homes. I guess you all have them by now. By law, by 2018, every European home should have a smart meter. So the Dutch said, well, these smart meters can read all the electricity that I consume in my house at any given moment. So every few seconds, the smart meter would send to your electricity company information on how many lights you have on. They can even know what appliances you're connecting, whether you're at home or not. So if a thief hacked into them, they would be able to know whether you got on holiday, whether anyone's at home. So the Dutch began to realize there were privacy problems with this. And people said, I want to opt out. I want to be able to say whether I want this installed in my house. And they won the battle. So they still have smart meters, but now they're opt-out, and the readings are not as frequent. One of the interesting things is that one of the arguments that the consumers' associations that campaigned against smart meters in the Netherlands used was this house. Do you recognize it? It's Anne Frank's house. It's where Anne Frank's family hid in the Second World War. And the argument was, if the house had had a smart meter, the family would not have lasted 2 days. Because you cannot hide in a smart meter home. Because as soon as you connect something, someone knows. And that was one of the arguments that they used, pretty powerful. It didn't make the news, but it changed something in the Netherlands. And after the full-body scanners, that was 2005, other things had happened. That was a year and a half ago. London installed what they called spy bins, rubbish bins that had sensors that could read your MAC address in your phone, and so know where you were going, how fast you were walking, whether you were entering a store or a different store, and they could connect all this data from you on several days, and then the idea was that they would be able to sell you targeted advertising. So there was a business model behind this. This was installed with no communication to anyone. And so when the media picked up on this, people were like, what? Are you telling me that as I walk down the street, there are bins that are collecting data that is sensitive, that can tell a company or an enemy or the government or whoever how I'm walking around the city? Are you serious? And I haven't even been consulted? And there's nothing I can do about it? The bins had to be removed. So like with full-body scanners, loss of money and loss of reputation. Other cases, this lovely young lady from the UK, she was appointed the first youth commissioner in a local police in a small town in York, I think it was, in the UK. She was 16 when she went through the interview process, And she was the one that was selected to represent young people before the police, the interests of young people before the police. Quite a nice development for the police to want to know how young people feel about how the police operate in our cities. She was appointed when she was 17. And as soon as she was appointed, the media revealed a tweet that she had written when she was 14. Some people said she was talking about drugs. She said she was talking about cartoons. She lost her job. So lots of young people heard about this, an immediate chilling effect. Oh my God, did I do something when I was 14 that can come back to haunt me later on? Another example, InBloom. InBloom was, because it's gone bankrupt now, was one of the most promising startups to work on data in education in the US. It was created about 3 years ago, and it provided services to primary and high schools by giving them a service that allowed them to have their own cloud and store the information from their students. Really useful for schools. But as soon as it began to spread, parents began to ask, how are you protecting my kids' data? Where is it going? Will you be able to do things in the future with this data that I'm not aware of? How can I stop you from using my kids' data? How can I stop my kids' data from haunting my son or my daughter down the line? How do I control that data? How will my children be able to control that data? When these questions were begun to be asked, the company had to close shop. They could not answer. They hadn't done much in terms of privacy or security. So they went bankrupt, one of the most promising startups in education. They were bankrupt, and right now the US administration and Obama announced a Student Privacy Act. Again, a privacy by disaster, a privacy failure that made people react. In this case, the administration. Another one, this is the last one. The New York taxis started to publish in open data the routes that people took. And they said, oh, don't worry, we anonymize it. It's just, people going from A to B, but there's no way you'll know who they are. You just know they're going from A to B. Well, guess what? If I get a taxi every day in front of my house and I go to work, it's quite easy to separate me from the crowd and to identify me. Not only that, if I am famous and someone takes a picture of me getting on the cab, it's very easy to link that picture that's been published in the gossip press to this map and know exactly where I was going. So anonymized open data, the future? Well, not really, if you care about your privacy, if you don't want others to know where you're going with your taxi. So again, privacy by disaster. All of a sudden, we're like, oh, this open data business might not be all that safe in the end. So all these cases have a chilling effect. They make the victims, but also those around them, realize that we have problems and there are things that we need to react upon. And some of the people that react become our clients. So our clients are either early adopters or scared. And oftentimes they're both. They're people that become early adopters because of fear. Because they call us and say, can you please help me make sure that I don't have the same problem that London had when I installed sensors in my city? Can you please help me make sure that people don't get angry at my open data scheme when they realize that there's chances for re-identifying personal data in those open data websites or projects? And this is great. I mean, I guess it's meant that we've gone from being a very non-aspirational company that just wanted to do research to working in a really exciting field of coming up with new methodologies and helping people with real-life problems. But it's also problematic. If the only way we can relate to privacy is after the fact, then that has a huge influence on what kind of solutions we can find. The first problem that we have is that if people only come to us after there's a disaster, most likely they've already collected the data in an unsafe way, and without any concern for privacy. They've already stored the data, they've already analyzed the data, and it's usually in data sharing that problems occur. So we've lost so many opportunities to do things well that our chances of intervening in an effective way are very much diminished. Also, when we work on the basis of privacy by disaster, the media usually intervene. And when the media intervene, they tend to distort things. And so it's hard to do awareness raising when there's the media in the middle, because they tend to distort the issues. There's also an incentive, if we only work on privacy by disaster and technology fiascos, there's also an incentive to hide failures. No one wants to be in the media because they're the ones that disregarded their clients' privacy. And so that is a problem. And also, sometimes our clients just want a quick fix. Or they say, can you provide me with a communication strategy? And yes, we can provide them with a communication strategy to communicate the things that they're doing well, not to hide the things that they're not doing, that they're failing to do. So we do not like to work in the field of privacy by disaster, and we would like to see that change, and we'd like to be able to intervene from the very beginning. So what we've been doing in the last few months is developing something that people can understand as a meta methodology to grasp what the challenges are and how to address them from the beginning. And so we started to look at all the methodologies out there: responsible research and innovation, technology assessment, privacy impact assessment. And we were like, we're sure that lots of smart people have come up with a solution for this. And we found that not really. There's so many small initiatives here and there, people that have been trying to answer these problems, but not in a very effective way or not in a very coordinated way. So what we had to do is get everything together, all the methodologies that had any relationship we were doing, including cost-benefit analysis, environmental impact assessments, everything that we thought could be linked, even if marginally, to what we were doing. We got it all together and said, OK, what is important here? Because we cannot tell people you have to be wary of everything all the time. So we wanted to end up with a few keywords that could convey the message that we wanted to convey. And these are the 4 keywords that we found were necessary for anyone to take into account if they wanted to innovate responsibly and to deal with data in a way that did not harm people's privacy. So you need to look at desirability. Is what you want to do needed? Is it socially desirable? Are there alternatives? What if you don't buy a new machine? Will it really improve your processes? Because maybe you're just fine as you are. And oftentimes we find that that is the case. So desirability is a clear thing for us. It's linked to policy oftentimes. Acceptability. Oftentimes, you may do everything right, but if you don't communicate it properly, people react as if you did everything wrong. I told you about the spy bins in London before that had to be removed. Only half a year later, New York installed sensors in telephone booths, and those sensors were opt-in and were beacons. So way better than the London development, and way more privacy-enhancing and responsible than what was installed in London. But people react in the exact same way. People don't understand how technology works. So unless you're able to tell them what it is you're doing with their data, they will react as if you're stealing their data and doing something responsible with it because everybody else is doing that. So social acceptability is a key thing that needs to be looked at and try to be able to predict how people will react to a given development and communicate how you're dealing with the data. Ethics, really important. Fundamental rights and values, freedom of expression, autonomy. There are so many fundamental rights that are involved when data-intensive technologies start to work and collect your data. So many dangers that need to be put on the table. So we do that in ethics. And finally, data management. And here's where anonymization plays a key role. We need to anonymize a lot better, and we need to develop better anonymization techniques. We're not there yet. We do not have the technological solution. Oftentimes, we're not doing things well because we can't, because we don't have the technologies, the techniques yet. But we are working on that, and we can work with the different kinds of approaches. We can use attribute-based encryption, differential privacy, different kinds of approaches, adding noise to databases. We can do different things at different points and come up with a tailored plan for any given problem. So after coming up with this, we tied it to the normative framework, the socioeconomic context, and everything that we thought was useful and interesting, with the tools that we can use, tools that come from social sciences, but also from engineering, from computing, everything from focus groups to anonymization techniques. Some tools come from economics, cost-benefit analysis, etc. And oops. And basically, this is what we do. And this is an exact example. This is what we call the ABC subsystem. We're using this methodology, this meta methodology that we then tailor to every problem in different kinds of projects. We work on social media mining in disaster management, on forensics, on smart city solutions. But we work a lot on border crossing and biometrics in border crossing. And how do we create technologies that respect people's rights when you cross a border? It's not easy. And this is one of the projects that we have, the ABC for EU. ABC stands for Automated Border Control Gates. I guess some of you may have gone through them. Right now, these days, when you land in an airport, sometimes you don't have a physical person checking your passport. It's a machine. Has it happened to you? Have you had to go through an automated machine? God, our clients will not like to know that, because none of you have. You will see them installed, mainly in Europe. You find them in Schiphol, in Madrid, in Paris, etc. And basically, they want to speed up the queues by you introducing your passport, the machine reading your biometrics, checking them against the database or not, and saying whether you represent a threat and whether you are who you say you are. And I just want to talk to you about some of the challenges we found with that, because it's a fascinating project. Because when you read the Schengen Border Code, it talks about proportionality. It talks about people's rights. It talks about autonomy, lots of really good things. But how do you translate that into the technology? Also, don't forget that the way we understand borders is very much linked to our conception of democracy. Why do you think you have two queues in airports? One for Europeans and one for non-Europeans. Why do you think that is? It's not to speed things up. It's because it would be illegal to mix us. Because as a European citizen, you are entitled to all your rights. You can enter your country or your area, the Schengen area, even if you are a criminal. No one can stop you from entering your space of sovereignty. If you're not a EU citizen, basically you have no rights, or very few rights. And so the control, the check of the data is completely different in one queue or the other. Of course, you commission a technology company to develop an ABC system, and they're like, we'll make everyone go through the same gate. And we'll check everyone's data against all the databases, because if they're a pedophile, we can stop them. Well, that's illegal. You cannot do that. Because as I said, you have the right to enter your country, and then you'd be subject to the laws of your country, but entering your country is not a police check. It's an administrative check. So how do we translate all this wealth in our laws and our current systems into the technology? This is what we try to do with our meta methodology. And of course, there can be other ways of approaching this. We think it's really important that we start thinking very deeply on how do we translate the values that we've created, our fundamental rights, into technological solutions, and stop giving up our fundamental rights and values for the sake of technologies that we don't even know if they're taking us to a better future or to a more efficient present. Thank you so much. So what now?
Thank you. Thank you, Gemma. Yeah, applause for Gemma. I'm sorry.
They've done that already. Any questions, I guess?
Are there any questions?
No, I convinced them all. Great.
I think so.
Good.
Otherwise, Gemma would be here for a few minutes and you could find her
me around.
there in the corner. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.